All right, Federal Railroad Administration, Motor Power and Equipment, 2012, I believe, somewhere in Chapter 8. Guidance Section A: the multiple unit locomotives are required to comply with the Section B and C, if so equipped. Locomotives equipped with a 26L type brake equipment qualify for the industry-wide waiver of the H87. Has been effective since 1985, which extended the time requirement of Statute 229, 27A2, and 22029A. Up to 1,104 days. In the 2005, the industry was granted another waiver for the extended time requirement to be 1,472 days for locomotive equipped with the 26L type brake equipment and a functioning air dryer. Under the waiver, the air dryer may be maintained, but all air brake filtering devices must be cleaned and replaced annually. See waiver of the FRA 2005 2132.5. All provisions of Statute 229-27 are performed in a 368-day cycle. The main reserve air filtering device, the dirt collectors, and supply lines shall be cleaned and repaired and replaced on an annual cycle. The FRA 6180.49A should indicate the waiver under which the locomotive is operating. The following components should receive attention with 1,104 days or 1,472 days cycle. The 26C brake, the reducing valve, the 7A26 industrial brake valve, the multiple unit 2A valve, the F1 selector valve, the 26D and 26F control valve, the A1CCOP valve, the J-type relay valve, the BP strainer, the number 8 and KM vent valves, foot valve, the MRE safety valves, the double check valve, the MRE check valves, and H-type relay valve, the magnetic valves, and P2A1 brake application valve. The 30 CW console mounted brake valve is considered to be the same as the 26C and the SA26 brake. Any other deviation of the brake valve, control valve, relay valve, the brake application valve excludes the entire equipment from the extension. For example, there is a distributing valve in the system. The locomotive does not qualify for either the 1,104 or 1,470 day extension. The remote control locomotive brake valves added to the 26L type of brake equipment are not part of general industry-wide waivers and have to be inspected accordingly. Locomotive equipped with the either the EPIC or the the EPIC or the CCB brake electronic braking system have been granted waivers to extend the time limit to 5-year cycle. However, these waivers conditional requirement that all of the filtering devices are to be cleaned, repaired, and replaced. The brake pipe vent valve inspected and cleaned, replaced, and tested in the 368-day calendar day interval. Recently, another test waiver was granted by the Association of American Railroads to extend the time requirement beyond 5-year period. Please be governed by the form of the FRA 6180-49A blue card on the locomotive. Section A4, fragmentation of the air brake cleaning, repairing, and the test and the maintenance is becoming more common due to the electronic air brake waiver granted for the several railroads under the umbrella of the Association of American Railway Waiver FRA 2005 2161-3. The specific conditions related to the fragment may be listed. Waiver approval letter applicable to the individual railroad. Whether or not there is an applicable waiver, the railroad implements the fragmented schedule of the locomotive air brake maintenance that is permitted by statute 229-27A4 is required to have an air recorder or air card, the other documentation in the cab of the locomotive that lists the various air brake components and the date of each component went through the most recent cleaning, repair, or testing cycle. The line of the blue card is labeled with the air brake statute 229-27. May be left blank and filled with the word fragmented or fragmented. See air card, or may be labeled as applicable filters only under section 229-27A1. The maintenance of the filters is recorded here and not on the air card. Entries of the air brake 229-27 line of the locomotive that is the fragment scheduled for the air maintenance. Brake maintenances are permissible if the tested date and place are provided with the oldest component among those in statute 229-27A1 and A2, or A2 shown on the air card. And section B displays are provided with the indication of the air pressure electronically shall be tested. Indicators used with load meters are required to be tested often. The question of the permitting of the requirements of testing loading meters. Load motors equipped with the AC traction motor with the computer screen that display loading information. Since the analog load meter indicated with the current amperage being applied with the traction motor is not included with acquired under the AC locomotive control stand, the regulation does not upload the information provided by the engineering operating with the AC locomotive is alternate electrical power output indicated by the traction effort in pounds. In many cases, the bar graph displays the traction effort as a percentage of the locomotive total output. The direct current traction motor analog motor meter Analog load meter indicates the short time high amperage zones which alter the engineering to possible overheating of the traction motor. The AC traction motor has no communicator brushes that thus full current can be applied without damage because the computers can automatically control loading at proper level to prevent damage. Motor room power equipment 9854 section 22929 biannual testing, except for the valve portions on the multiple unit locomotives are cleaned with the repaired and tested as prescribed in statute 22927. All valves and valve portions of multiple unit locomotive brakes and electronic pneumatic brake master controls in the air brake system, include the related dirt collectors and filters, shall be cleaned and repaired and tested in intervals that not exceed 736 calendar days. The date and place of the cleaning, repairing, testing shall be recorded on a form of the FRA 618049A. The person performing the work of the person supervisor shall sign the form and record the parts of the air brake system that are cleaned and repaired, tested, and shall be kept in the carrier's files or in the cab of the locomotive. B. At its option, a carrier may fragment the work required by the section. In this event, the separate air record shall be maintained under the transparent cover of the cab. The air record shall include the locomotive number, the list of the air brake components, the date and time of the place of the inspection testing of each of the components, the signature of the person performing the work, the signature of the person supervising shall be included with each of the components. The duplicate record shall be maintained with the carrier's files. Our locomotive air drivers are not specifically addressed with the federal state laws in Title 49 CFR Part 229 and Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 20107, nor the FRA to determine with the air drivers an imprudency locomotive purpose of Title 49 CFR 229.7. Because the air drivers are not addressed with the federal safety law, no violation shall be taken with the defective air drivers. In a number of the waivers granted with the FRA safety board to extend the intervals between the brake maintenance similar to between cleaning and repairing the testing, commonly referred to as Cotton S and Bolton Freight in the Title 49 CFR 229.29 biannual testing passenger to 49 CFR 238.309 periodic braking equipment and type maintenance. The safety board required a functional air dryer. The condition waiver, the locomotive covered with the waiver, requires the functioning of the air driver to be on with the current brake maintenance interval with the regulation is found the defective air driver. The locomotive would be non-compliant under the Title 49 U.S. CFR Code Federal Regulation 229.29, 238.309. Because of the overdue brake maintenance, not the defect of the air dryer, the waivers do not explain the FRA will determine whether an air dryer is defective. Violations reports must explain that the base of the inspector determined that the air dryer is defective as the note, and the inspector shall not rely on the air dryer's cooler indicated to make the determination. Section A. This section refers to all the other valves of the air brake system as noted with the guidance of Statute 229 waiver that was granted in 1985 that allows the locomotive with the 26L type of air brake system to go in a total of 1,104 days between the required cleaning, repairing, and testing. Locomotives equipped with either the BPIC or the CCB electronic braking have been granted a conditional waiver to extend with the time requirement for cleaning and repairing testing valves of the valve portion at 5-year cycle. When Part 229 was promulgated, the multiple unit locomotives were subject to 2-year inspection intervals, but it was not changed under the passenger equipment safety standard were written. It is still 736 days, except as provided with the statute 239-2309B4. Every 1,104 days, if the multiple unit locomotive is part of the fleet of 100% equipped with air dryers, is equipped with the PS 680, 26C, 26L, and PS90 and C7, CS1, RT2, RT5A, GRB1, CS2, and 26R brake systems. Section B. Handling similarity fragmentation brake maintenance under the statute 2927A4 above. However, in this case, the components will be covered on the air card of the brake, so that the air brake 22929 line of the blue card shall be left blank on the labeled fragmented C air card. Enter the air brake 22929 line on the locomotive air brake on the locomotive fragmented air permissible. If the test and the date place of the provided with the oldest compartment shown on the air card, recently another test was granted with the Association of American Railroad to extend the time requirement beyond the 5-year period. Please be governed by the form FRA 618049A, the blue card on the locomotive. 229 229 main reserve test. Except as provided with the paragraph C of this section before the put in the surface at the intervals that do not exceed 736 calendar days. Each main reserve, other than an aluminum reserve, shall be subject to the hydrostatic pressure test at least 25% more than the maximum working pressure fixed with the chief mechanical officer. The test and the date and the pressure shall be recorded with the form FRA 618049A of the person performing the test, and the person supervisor shall sign the form. Except as provided with the paragraph of this section, each main reserve other than an aluminum reserve shall be hammered and tested over the entire surface as well. The reserve with empty intervals not exceeding 736 calendar days. The test may be placed, but it shall be recorded in the form FRA 618049A. The person performing the test and the person supervisor shall sign the form. See, each welded main reserve originally constructed would withstand at least 5 times the maximum working pressure fixed with the chief mechanical officer that may be drilled over the entire surface of the telltale holes with a 3/16 of an inch diameter. The holes shall be spaced not more than 12 inches apart, measured both longitudinally and circumferentially, drilled with the oversurface of the extreme depth of the formula displayed in the current Title 49 CFR Part 229. One row hole shall be drilled lengthwise of the reserve on the line intersection of the drain opening the reserve so the drills does not have to meet the requirements of the paragraphs A and B of the section, except for the requirements of the hydrostatic before it is placed in use. Whenever the telltale holes shall have penetrated with the interior of any reserve, the reserve shall be permanently withdrawn from the surface. The reserve now in use may be drilled in lieu of the test provided with the paragraphs A and B of the section. It shall be receive a hydrotestic before the return to use. D. Each aluminum main reserve before being placed in use intervals that do not exceed 736 calendar days. There will be one clean given through visual inspection by the internal and external surface of the evidence defects of deterioration. 2. Subject hydrostatic pressure to at least twice of the maximum working pressure fixed with the chief mechanical officer, not less than 250 psi. The test of the date pressure shall be recorded from the form FRA 618049A. The person conducting the test of the present supervisor shall sign the form. Guidance. Section C. The word drilled is to be inserted with a hammer hydro block with the FRA 618049A. The exterior drilled reserve are examined from the general condition. Alright, section 229.33, out of use credit. When the locomotive is used of the out of use for 30 or more consecutive days, it is out of use when it is due for any of the testing and inspection required in the section 229.23, 25, 27, 29, and 31. Out of use. Notation shall number the out of use days shall be made with the inspection line of the form FRA 618049A. The supervisor and employee of the carrier who is responsible for the locomotive shall attest the notation if the locomotive is out of the use of the more and more periods with less than 36 consecutive days. The interval prescribed for that any of the testing and inspection under this part may be extended to by the number of days in which the period of the locomotive is out of use, and since the last test and inspection is in question, a movement made in accordance with the statute 229.9 is not in use for the purpose of determining the period of out of use credit. Guidance. The out-of-use credit inserted with the inspection line with the FRA form 618049A accounts for the continuous record of the locomotive's use of the calendar, the random days that cannot be accumulated now or used, and to extend intervals prescribed for any of the testing and inspection under this part unless the time of the period for 30 or more consecutive days. The credible out-of-use time of 30 or more days, which is used as extended testing period, must be recorded in block number 11 on the form 618049A. The new form is created once the credit is used. It should be related from the form if the railroad leaser a locomotive to the private industry if a railroad leases the locomotive to private industry is used entirely within confines of a plant that is not part of the general railroad system, the locomotive cannot be credited with the out of use time because the locomotive is being used. When the railroad has leased the locomotive returned, the locomotive must bring it into compliance with all Part 229 before it can be used in general railroad services. Statute 229.41, protection against personal injury. Fan openings, exposed gears, pinions, exposed moving parts of mechanical pipe and carrying hot gases, high voltage equipment, switches, circuit breakers, contractors, relays, grid resistors, fuses shall not be non-hazardous and in non-hazardous location. Equipment is for the guards to prevent the personal injury. Guidance. The equipment of this section is designed to protect against the safety hazard that could cause the personal injuries. 229.43, exhaust and battery gas. Products of the combination shall be released entirely outside of the cab. Other components of the exhaust stacks shall be sufficiently high, provided to prevent the entire products of the combustion in the cab and other compartments of usable operation conditions. Battery containers shall be vented and brake batteries kept from gassing excessively. Guidance. Section A. The exhaust system of the locomotive shall be inspected closely with the diesel engine, the running of the cracks, manifolds, expansion bellows, the broken, blown out manifold, gases, other signs, exhaust gas, discharge of the entire compartment, as in evidence of heavy accumulation of the soot and residue. The lay shall not be operated with the inspector or accelerated with the diesel engine to check out for exhaust leaks. If there is evidence of an exhaust leak, the railroad should be requested to operate the lay shaft. Or rev the engine to locate the leak. Instances that have been mentioned in some of the railroad inspectors have been reported exhaust leaks, and railroad inspectors could not find them. Since the advent of the EMD GP30, its successor, the GEU 25B, its successor, the locomotive diesel engine compartments are pressured to extent that any residual fume in the car body will be scavenged to the atmosphere around the exhaust stack of the opening in the roof. All right, 229.45 general conditions. All system components of the locomotive shall be free of conditions endangering the safety of the crew, locomotive, and train. The conditions include interior attachments, components including third rail shoes, beams, and traction motors, motor gear cases, the fuel tanks, and fuel, oil, water, steam, or other leak accumulations of oil, electrical equipment that created a personal injury hazard, improperly function of the components, including slack adjustment, pantographic operating cylinders, circuit breakers, contactors, relay switches, fuses, and crack brakes, excessive wears, other structural infirmities of the components, including the quill, drives, axle, gears, pinions, and pantographic shows, horns and third rail beams, traction motor gear cases, and fuel tanks. Guidance. This regulation is basically a compendium of many of the regulations found in the former Part 230. The regulation was written when the railroads were concerned with the provision of the regulation created with a degree of discretion, interpretation, application by the motor power and equipment inspector. The FRA position of the inspectors have always been interpreted regulation part of the 230 in reasonable manner. The FRA also believes the condition that endanger the safety of the crew, the locomotive, train provided with the proper and lawful limit of the application in this section. Conditions describe the fuel and water, fuel, oil, water, stem, and the other leaks must be qualified as stating that they constitute personal injury hazard. Insecure the attachments of those, such as the third rail, shoe, beams, traction motors, motor gear cases, fuel tanks should have relevant safety to have deteriorated to the point with immediately unsafe for the could cause accident. A locomotive should not be cited for conditions described above if they do not constitute a hazard of any type but merely are technical nature. However, the railroad should be required to particular condition bringing the locomotive into compliance. Any of the safety appliances not covered in Part 231 should such as step handholds and the aids of sanding locomotives, safety railings, ladder treads, after affording access to the roof of the locomotive are covered in this section. Similarly, the sand hole and pipe that has all holes in the discharge sand at eye level. The inspector must establish the personal injury hazard under Title 2 at Section 229.45. The inspector must explain how the blown would cause the injury. Sand blowing at the eye level at the locomotive walkway. The inspector should use the code of which they handle the missing of the locking of the feature of the device, the feature of the defective locomotive air brakes, multiple unit end cocks, and since the condition may affect the operation of locomotive brakes. When the violation is submitted for any of the conditions described in the section, the personal injury hazard should be described to include the full examination of the conditions, how it creates a potential hazard. All right, Statute 229.46 brakes. General. The carrier should know that before each of the trip, the locomotive brake device regulating all pressures included but not limited to automatic independent brake valves operate intended and the water and oil have been drained from the air brake system. The inspector, should observe the railroad personnel performing the required air brake test on the locomotive. The inspector should come check to someone before the starting of the trip, drain the oil water from the air brake system. The FRA considered with the trip yard operation to be started with the shift. The mere presence of the water, oil, and brake system itself does not establish a violation under the section, nor does the fact that there is oil water system following the daily inspection establishing a violation. In order to establish the violation, the FRA must prove the water, oil was not drained from the system before the tripping. The violation began. Thus, if the oil, the water represents, the inspector should discuss the presence of such could have occurred while the locomotive was en route within the trip, the length of the trip, the amount of oil in the water. The mere fact that the daily inspection was performed during the established violation under the section, the FRA must establish that the oil in the water was not drained prior to the commencement of the involved trip. Most of the railroad locomotives are equipped with some of the type of automatic main air reserve drains to drain the water and oil from the air brake system. Usually, the automatic drain valve is cut out, and inoperative water and oil will accumulate in the reserve. In this case, the inspector should take an exception to inoperative, defective, nullified automatic drain valve. The automatic drain valve is found in the inoperative, nullified by no water or oil present in the reservoir. No compliant condition does not exist under this section, since it is the action and prudency of locomotive section. Section 229.7 could not be used to enforce. 229.47, emergency brake valve. Except for locomotives with the cab designed for the occupancy by only one person, each railroad locomotive should be equipped with a brake valve that is accessible to the member of the crew other than the engineer. From the crew member to the position in the cab, the one car, the body of the type of locomotive, the brake piping, the valve shall be attached to the wall adjacent to each of the existing doors. The word emergency brake shall be legally stenciled and marked, and near each of the brake valves shall be shown in the adjacent badge plate. Multiple unit control cab of the locomotive operated with the road service shall be equipped within an emergency brake valve that is accessible to another crew member in the passenger compartment vestibule. The word emergency brake valve shall be legible, stenciled, and marked near each of the valves shall be shown in the adjacent badge plate. General guidance, Section A. The emergency brake valve may be found with the various locations of different locomotives and non-privatized locomotive, except for that must be readable, accessible to someone other than the engineer. On locomotive enclosed with the walkways, there must be an additional valve adjacent with the rear exit doors. Although the requirement does not address the location of the valve within the cab, the required stenciling near in each of the valve must be visible. If the valve is located beyond the cab, where the crew member must be fold the seat down in order to activate the required stenciling must not be obstructed. The required stenciling must be visible to identify the valve's location. Section B. The emergency brake valve must be located in the passenger compartment with the most be connected to the brake pipe. Good enforcement discretion should be used with the emergency brake valve designation found in non-intact and condition shall be brought to the railroad's attention for the correction, and the impactor should periodically have the railroad test an emergency brake valve on the locomotive a random basis to ensure proper operation. 229.49 Main Reserve System. A1. The main reserve system of each locomotive shall be equipped with at least one safety valve that shall properly prevent accumulation of pressure of more than 15 pounds per square inch above the maximum working air pressure fixed by the chief mechanical officer of the courier area operating the locomotive. 2. The except for the non-equipped multiple unit locomotives built prior to the January 1st, 1981, each locomotive is a pneumatically actuated system of the power controls shall be equipped with a separate reserve of the air under the pressure to be used. The operating of these proper power controls the reserve shall be provided the means to automatically prevent the loss of pressure in the event of the failure to maintain air pressure to have the storage capacity not less than the complete operating cycle of the control and equipment be located where it is not equipped to exposed to damage. B. A governor shall be provided with the stops and starts, unloads, and loads of the air compressor within 5 pounds per square inch below the maximum working air pressure fixed by the carrier. C. The air compressor governors used in the connection with the automatic brake system should be adjusted with the compressor will start with the main reserve pressure is not less than 15 pounds per square inch above the maximum pressure fixed by the carrier will not stop the compressor until the reserve pressure has been increased to at least 10 pounds. Guidance. The inspector should periodically have the railroad administrate the functional setting of the safety valve of the compressor governor and locations where the periodic inspections are to be performed. The Union Pacific Railroad requested that was granted conditional waiver to permit the Union Pacific locomotive main reserve safety system the valve to accumulate up to 25 psi above the maximum working air pressure fixed by the chief mechanical officer. The maximum allowed with the regulation is 15 psi. The waiver was assigned docket number FRA 2005 21179. A copy of the decision letter was available at the Motor Power and Equipment Waiver section of the Compliance Manual. Alright, 229.51 aluminum main reserve. Aluminum main reserves used by the locomotive should be designed and fabricated as valves. The head and the shells should be made of aluminum associational alloy number 50830, produced in accordance with the American Society of Mechanical Engineers specifications SB209, as defined in the ASME Boiler Pressure Vessel Code 1971 edition, Section 2, Part B, page 123, with minimum tensile strength of up to 40,000 psi or 4 ksi. 2. Each of the aluminum main reserves shall be designed with the fabricated with accordance with the ASME Boiler Pressure Vessel Code, Section 8, Provision 1, Senate 1971 edition, except otherwise provided in this part. 3. Aluminum main reserve shall be constructed within a stand at least 5 times the maximum working pressure of 800 psi, whichever is greater. Each aluminum main reserve shall have at least 2 inspection openings and permit with a completely circumferential visual operation interface of the surface on the reserve less than 18 inches of the diameter. The size of each of the inspecting openings shall be at least at 1.5 inches thread of the iron pipe, and the reserve at 18 or more inches diameter. The size of each of the openings shall be at least 2 inches threaded on iron pipe. B. The following publications which contain the industry standards incorporated with reference A of the section maintained may be obtained with the publisher. Also, the Office of the Railroad Safety and Federal Railroad Administration, Washington, D.C. 20590, Section 2 and Section 8 of the ASME Boiler Pressure Vessel Code 971, and published by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers United Engineering Center of 345 East 47th Street, New York, New York 117. Guidance. Currently, aluminum main air reserves are not used. The section is included with the regulation to provide design guidance when the inspector finds an aluminum air reserve. The regional office should immediately notify with the information formed by the Motor Power and Equipment Staff Director. 229.53 Brake gauges. All mechanical gauges, all devices provided with the indication of the air pressure electronically that are used for the engineering to aid in the control braking of the train of the locomotive shall be located so that they are conveniently read by the engineer, usually positioned during the operation of the locomotive. The gauge device shall not be more than 5% or 3 pounds per square inch in air, whichever is less. Guidance. Regulation pertains only to the gauges displays used for the engineering controlling the braking of the train locomotive pneumatically, and all other gauges located at other locations of the locomotive are not included. Gauges or pressure devices on belt packs used in remote control locomotive operations are subject to the sections. 229.55 Piston travel. Brake cylinder pistons shall be sufficient to provide with the brake shoe clearance where the brake shoe is when are released. When the brakes are applied with the standing locomotive, the brake cylinder piston travel may not exceed 1.5 inches less than the total possible piston travel. The total possible piston travel for each of the locomotives shall be entered in the form FRA 618049A. The minimum brake cylinder pressure shall be 30 pounds per square inch. Guidance. B. The requirement of this piston travel not exceeding 1.5 inch of that less than the total possible piston travel. The measurement can be found with the locomotive blue card, the FRA form 618049A. The inspector should periodically check 49A for the accuracy measurement. One typical locomotive in service day, the total piston travel with the truck mounted the brake cylinder is 8 inches. Therefore, an allowable piston travel shall not exceed 6.5 inches. Excessive piston travel over the minor nature of the only one cylinder shall not necessarily result in violation. The railroad shall be requested to repair it with the measuring piston of the traveling of the locomotive. The measurement is opening of the cylinder into the colander. Is not greasing the ring with the practicing the measuring piston travel on the freight cars. Section C. In regard to the minimum locomotive brake cylinder pressure required by the federal regulations, the federal regulations were written with the cast iron brake shoes where they standard brake cylinder relay air valve delivered 100% of the control pressures of the brake cylinder, while the advent and high friction composition brake shoe various relays valve that have been depending on whether the rigging was designed for cast iron or composite shoes. To the best matching the stopping and distance of the cast iron, the two-step relay valve that is used for the composition shoes. One level is used for the automatic brake where speed with generally above switching speeds, and higher level independent brake is normally used with the switching. By tailoring the relay valve of the locomotive standard independent brake valve, the setting can be universally on a railroad. The setting is usually 45 psi. The resulting brake cylinder may vary from 27 psi within 60% of the day to 72 psi for the 160% relay, 60% relay valve. The J46 and the J64 are normally found on older locomotives that were converted from the cast iron shoes clipping rings to composition shoes with clasping rigging. Therefore, the FRA considers such a locomotive to be compliant with the federal regulation Motor Power and Equipment 9841. 2957. The foundation brake gear. A lever rod, brake beam, hanger, and pin, hanger or pin may not be worn through more than 30% of its cross-sectional area. Cross, cracked, broken, or missing. All pins shall be secured in place with the cotter, split keys, and nuts. Brake shoes should be fastened to the brake shoes in line with the relationship with the wheel to prevent localized thermal stress to the edge of the rim of the flange. Alright, guidance. When out of line overaging the brake shoe discovered, the inspector should try to determine the root of the cause of the defect of the bushing, hangers, and pins, etc. Also, the wheel should be examined. The thermal stress the edge of the wheel, evidence of the small thermal cracks, metal foam, and discolorization. 229.59 leakage. Leakage from the main air reserve related piping not exceeding average of 3 pounds per square inch in per minutes for 3 minutes after pressure has been reduced to 60% of the maximum pressure. B. Brake pipe leakage may not exceed 5 pounds per square inch per minute. With all full service application maximum pressure with the communication brake cylinder closed, the brake shall remain applied at least 5 minutes. Leakage from the control air reserve related piping of the pneumatically operated controls may not exceed on an average 3 pounds per square inch per minute in 3 minutes. Alright, your guidance. Section 8. An air leak from the main air reserve cannot be considered non-complying unless it is in excess of 3 pounds after it is described in this section. If the inspector believes that the leak is excessive, he should have the railroad perform the required test procedure. Section B, and after an automatic brake pipe reduction of at least 20 psi not exceeded full service is made, wait 40 to 60 seconds. If the locomotive is equipped with the means of maintaining the brake pipe pressure, the feature must be cut out. Next, observe if the brake pipe leakage exceeds 5 psi per minute. Section C, leakage of the air observed the brake cylinder if it may not be non-compliant condition. Non-compliant condition would be present if the brakes did not remain applied for the 5 minutes as a result of the leak. This contains all determined after the communication from the automatic brake valve is cut off. The completion of the full service application the railroad should perform as required for the test of the motor power and equipment inspector. Section D, the system will only be found in locomotives which use air operated electrical power contactors or an air operated throttle. Alright, 229.61, the drafting system. A coupler may not have the following condition. The distance between the garment and knuckle hose of more than 5/8 of an inch of the standard type of the coupler with the MCB contour of 1904, or more than 5 5/16 of an inch on a D&E coupler. A cracker break on the side wall of the pin of the bearing bows is outside of the shades area shown in Figure 1 of the pulling face of the knuckle. 3. A coupler assembly without the anti-creep protection. It may not have the following condition of free slack in the coupler of the drawbar not observe the friction device if the draft of the gears exceed 1.5 inches, a broken or cracked coupler carrier, a broken or cracked yoke, a broken or cracked draft gear. B. A device shall be provided under the lower end of the draw pins articulated with the connected pins to prevent the pin from falling out of the place in the case of the breakage. Guidance. Coupler height and safety appliances shall be examined. The compliance with the safety appliance of the standards. All deficiencies shall be reported in Part 231. The coupler heights must be measured on the level of the tangent track. The standard height of the locomotive coupler, identical to the freight and passenger. The standard gauge of the railroad center of the knuckle shall be a maximum of 34.5 inches and a minimum of 31.5 inches above the top of the rail. Section A2. The definition of cracker brake must be applied judicially, used when examining the coupler for non-compliant conditions. If conditions observed with the shrinkage crack of the hot tear of the phenomenon that occurs during the casting of the process, it does not significantly diminish the strength of the coupler, thus is not considered to be cracked or non-compliant condition. Never additional information on the coupler crack. See the guidance related with the draft system for the freight cars contained in Chapter 4, Section 215.123. Section A3. The most freight hauling locomotives have a top-operated lock lifter as long as the clearance of the operating loop of the knuckle is closed. The anti-creep should be functioning. Section A4 that pertains all the type of locomotives regardless of the surface which they are put into. Loss of motion draft system. Free slack is not observed with the draft gear with a similar equipment. Free slack was determined manually placing the coupler into the draft buff position, describing the mark of each position on the side of the coupler horn, and then measuring the distance between the two marks. 229.63 lateral motion. Examples are provided with B, the total uncontrolled lateral motion between the hubs and the wheels of the boxes, between the boxes, pedestals, and or both or any pair of the wheels may not exceed 1 inch, or non-powered axles, friction bearing powered axles, 3/4 of an inch on all other powered axles. B, total uncontrolled lateral movement may not exceed 1 1/4 of an inch on the center axle of 3-axle trucks. Guidance. The total uncontrolled lateral motion referred in this section means the lateral motion provided by the design for the parts plus an additional lateral motion due to wear. These inspectors may have to measure several points on the axle to examine assembly to calculate the total clearance. Section 229.64 plain bearings. The plain bearing box shall contain visible free oil, may not contain cracks to the extent that it will leak oil. The guidance: only a plain bearing box is a reference in the section that only very restrictive manner the mechanical defect of the friction barrier as well as the defects found in the roller bearing assembly shall be reported under section 229.45. General conditions obvious for the hazard condition found with the inspection either with the friction roller bearing not specifically covered by the regulations may be handled by the use of special notice repairs, FRA Form 6188. Alright, 2965 spring rigging. The protective construction of the safety hanger shall be provided with preventing the spring planks of the spring seating the bolsters from dropping the track structure in the event of the hanger or the spring failure. Being elliptical, spring may not have its top of the long leaf of the broken from other leaves of the broken, except when the spring is part of the nest of 3 or more springs. None of these other springs in the nest has its top leaf or any of the 3 leaves broken. Any other coiled spring or saddle may be not broken. An equalizer hanger or the bolt or gib pin may not be cracked or broken. A coil spring may not be fully compressed when locomotive is at rest. The shock absorber may not be broken and can clearly form droplets of oil or other fluid. Guidance Section B. The section is restricted to application. Many of the locomotives presently servicing the elliptical springs have more than 3 leaf springs in the nest. The locomotive may have a long leaf broken, but up to 2 other small leaves broken or more than 5 smaller leaves broken, provided no other long leaves are broken. The context of the aforementioned guidance applies to elliptical springs that they are only part of the nest of 3 or more. At no time may a locomotive have 2 long leaves broken. Also, many locomotives are equipped with rubber steel laminated pads instead of leaf springs. Where such pads are found, no defects or deteriorated to create the unsafe condition that they are reported under Section 229.45. Only the outer coil spring is addressed in this section. All coil springs in the truck assembly are to be inspected, considering such those that are used to be supported span bolster of the EMD SD series of locomotives must be compliant with this section. Spring plank resisting on or in the contact of safety hangers shall be reported. Section C, clearly formed droplets means a fresh accumulation of oil, not dirt or dry, that continually or slowly forms into the beads. If they are evidence of the unit being effective, it is considered defective. This applies to shock absorbers and yaw dampers. Alright, 229.67, the trucks. And we're going to check and see what we're running here. Another